Hi, this is more or less my outlook on life, a summary of my thoughts and reality in general. I've always had this anxiety about the nature of the world. My most frightening thought, well, not really frightening, but is the absence of reality. Reality is, of course, relative. If you were born in the jungle with no knowledge of the outside world, your whole perception of reality would be based on your confines, be it physical or mental. After all, it was only about 500 years ago that the whole world thought that the world was flat. This thought always comes into my head when I'm in an argument with the pro choice people. Often I would be asked the question, how would I feel if I was aborted? Or maybe, don't I love living? The hypothesis based on the presupposition that I could feel something even if I didn't exist. I know the argument is raised to draw empathy for the unfortunate who will not be able to experience life. This paradox always leaves me feeling an indescribable coldness, like some die was thrown and we're so lucky to exist, to experience reality. I can't remember how old I was when those thoughts first manifested, but ever since then I've made a conscious effort to understand the world around me and not limit myself to what was being taught in my non secular environment. Atheist before one, I do believe in God. It's funny, but that may have been the first time that I've said it with some kind of conviction. I'm not some kind of religious nut, but I do think you have to be some kind of nut to assume that we are the product of randomness, some kind of arbitrary permutation. I stopped going to church mainly because I like sleeping in on Sundays. Well, that's kind of a joke, but I actually wanted to be a priest at some point. I'm always wanted to help people become better. I think that people are the only ones who can make this world a paradise. I thought that if I were a priest, I would somehow be able to play some part in creating paradise on earth. But the more I went to church, the more it felt like this was just another organization more concerned about sustaining itself rather than helping its members. What threw me off most was the Bible. The second I realized that the Catholic Church had a calendar where they repeated the Bible every 3 years or so, just felt like pure force fed horse crap to me. I'm not going to continue bashing the Bible, but basically, I just could not accept that this book could be the word or work of God. This realization made me extremely paranoid. If this book could be the foundation of so many institutions, so many wars, the premise of enslavement, I wondered what other fallacies existed. This is when I developed a Tarzan complex. Basically, I analyzed everything as if I had been born in the forest and had no prior knowledge of any modern science. That way, I could come to some primitive understanding of the world with my own bias. Afterwards, I researched different fields trying to align my understanding with purely scientific truths. I can tell you at the time in my life, I really thought I was going nuts. I seem to be getting more confused the more I researched and thought. I don't think people are supposed to engage in so many activities at one time, which is why we not only have specialists for every scientific field, but also for all the categories that each of these fields is comprised. I think every person has to obsess over a small subset of a field in order to draw a more concise conclusion that can later be added to some kind of database. This, I believe, is our greatest gift and the main reason why the world is how it is today. I'll get back to this gift probably. So at this point, I'm thinking I must be real arrogant to presume that to have the ability to understand the universe by reading stuff from people who don't understand the universe. Anyway, I give up that pursuit. I became interested in computers because I like video games. I started programming, trying to make my own. Then hit me. The paradigm between the programmer and the game is tantamount to God and reality. The program cannot do anything that the programmer does not program it to do. There is emergent gameplay, but it is impossible for the game to suddenly turn itself into a word processor, for example. The more experience I got as a programmer, the more the world seemed to make sense to me. As I got involved in larger, more complex applications, I had to resort to higher level languages and third party libraries. This is when I had another realization. Perhaps there was no absolute God governing the universe. Just as there exist thousands of programmers creating their own virtual worlds, maybe God is one of many creating many separate realities. Now I'm going to ignore the different software packages that can operate on common networks or plugins that run on specific applications, mainly because that just brings more speculation into the mix. And for the time being, it simplifies the logic if one God were the creator of our reality. This is where my assumptions become grim as I give you my meaning of life. If I haven't lost you yet, my basic assumption is that God, a supernatural being, created a system physically manifested as our reality. Now, just as a programmer is likely to write more than one program in his life, God created this reality, loved it, got better at it, and now we're like Windows 3.1 and no one cares what features made us revolutionary. God has moved on to create bigger and better realities, and maybe once in a while looks through the archive and chuckles at how noobish he was when he made us. My main reason for maintaining the software engineering as my analogy for reality is because of the encapsulation that exists primarily in the computer world. Therefore, God could create our reality and the building blocks for life. However, she, God, may not be directly responsible for our creation. We ourselves are on the cusp of genetic engineering breakthroughs. The most limiting factor is our ability to resolve our fear of tampering with God's work. If we were to create some variant of Homo sapien on a distant planet sometime in the future, and leave the majority of the population stranded there, in time we would undoubtedly become entwined in the racist folklore. This is the basic premise of the Nephilim and the snake people who purportedly enslaved us and taught us capitalism, the divine rights of kings, etc. I'm not going to go into that. I would like to develop this a little further as I like to have it documented, and I left out lots of stuff that I used to draw my conclusion. But I think this is as far as my attention span goes for today. Bye.